Okay, so I've got my cylinder made. This is good because now I can go ahead and start shaping it. A couple different things that we can do. We can do the choke, and then we also compress from the inside, okay? And that's gonna look like this. Let me get this part cleaned up just so you guys get a little bit better vision of what's going on, okay? The squeezed out stuff, we'll worry about that later on. Make sure everything's wet on the inside, okay? So with my left hand, and I'm pushing in at about 3 o'clock, I'm just putting a little bit of pressure here, and I don't know if you guys will be able to see this on the video. I hope you can, okay? But you can see how this is starting to get a little bit wider. You can see that little shape. Just putting a little bit of pressure, not a lot, okay? Because if I put too much pressure, this is gonna get wider. As we stretch the clay and make it wider, when we stretch it, the clay is gonna actually get thinner. So if we stretch it too far, eventually it'll get too thin and it'll fall over on itself. And that we don't want, obviously, because we want this to hold its shape. So I'm just putting a little bit of pressure, just kind of gauging about where I think I can go with it as far as I can bring it out, okay? And then in combination, what I can do, well, first thing I want to do is, I've got a little bit of water down on the inside. I'm going to squeeze out my sponge to dry, and I'm just going to drag it on the inside there so that I soak up the water that's on the inside. We don't want to leave that in there. Notice that I've significantly slowed my wheel down also. The speed's a lot slower, okay? So as you start to do the detail work, you want to go a little bit slower, okay? So I'm about quarter speed from where I started in the beginning. So I did my press from the inside, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a choke, okay, to help bring that in to give it that nice typical vase shape, okay? And so I'm just kind of putting a little bit of pressure with my hands, just like that, okay? So you can kind of see it's getting that hourglass shape of a typical vase or vase, if you want to call it that. Okay. So I'm starting to get a little bit better shape here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and bring this in a little bit more. Now, I can make this pretty good, but I can't make that curve perfect, all right? That's where the rib comes in. So the rib has, as I mentioned earlier in one of the earlier videos, okay, it has that nice 90-degree angle, which is good for making sharp turns. It's good for scraping stuff in the beginning. It also has a curved edge, which I can use then for shaping, and I can use that as kind of a template. So if I press this to the side, into the side of my clay, all right, and then from the inside, I put a little bit of pressure pulling outward, the clay will follow the shape of my rib, all right, giving it that natural, perfect curve that I can't do with my hands on my own, okay? Just because I am not that talented, and there are not that many artists that actually are. So, as I like to say, there's a tool for that, usually, okay? Now the top of this has gotten a little uneven. I'm gonna go ahead and trim that lip again, okay? Again, my fingers are just kind of going along for the ride. Nice and steady. I put my needle tool through the side until it touches the inside. Oops, jumped the gun there a little bit. Okay, so then it comes off. All right, now if it's a little bit uneven, that's okay. Clay actually got a little bit on the thin side, so what I may actually do is fix that up a little bit. Let's bring this in a little bit more. That compresses my clay a little bit. And then we'll try trimming the lip again because that lip keeps getting a little bit uneven. There we go. These are all things that you're gonna have to adjust as you make it, okay? It doesn't mean that there's one specific way of doing it. It doesn't mean that there's a way that you have to do it. I am showing you a way that works for me. I am showing you a way that I have developed over 20 years of doing this. And you will too. You will develop your own little idiosyncrasies, your own little details and ways of doing things, okay? So if you're not doing it exactly the way I'm doing it, it's not that big a deal. Just make sure that you're getting the result that you want. And if you get it some other way than what I've done, that's fine, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and use that rib again, press that in so I get a shape or a curve that I like a little bit better. Okay, again, I cannot make a curve that perfect, okay, with just my fingertips. To me, it's next to impossible. There's probably somebody out there that can, and more power to them, you know, good for them. All right, So I'm just dragging a dry sponge over all of this stuff, just kind of getting rid of any excess water that might be there. The lip, okay, what I can do is use the webbing of my fingers, okay, and just kind of drag that across the top of it, and that'll make that lip nice and rounded. And then last but not least, go ahead back over and make sure that we get all the extra slip and water that's been on there. And this also helps kind of smooth things out. So that's nice and clean. You can use the sponge if you want to round the lip out a little bit too. Okay. All right, down here at the bottom, we want to get rid of some of this clay because we can't use it to squeeze out stuff. There's not much you can do with it. So I use the tip of my modeling tool, okay? And I'm just gonna press it into the side here till it touches the bottom, okay? And then I'm gonna take the little finger side that has that little cook on it, and I'm gonna pull that away from the edge, so that way it separates it from the clay, and then I can use that to scrape that up and get rid of it, okay? Like I said, you can use the ribs to finish, the flexible one with the smooth edge, okay? If you drag that over your clay, it'll actually almost polish it. It gives it that nice, really smooth finish. Really makes for a nice look to it, nice and clean. The other thing that's good for it is if you want to go ahead and, yeah, man. There we go. Gives you a nice smooth canvas to work with. And then, as I mentioned, you've got the serrated rib. I don't know if you guys can see that. Anyway, that you can use to make lines in the side of it, and just pressing it into the side. And this are called registers. So that way I've got a bunch of different designs here. And then what you can do is you can take that and you can move it upside down, or move it up and down really fast, and that gives you kind of a zigzaggy design. And depending on how much space you have and how fast you go, it'll give you kind of a fun little squiggly design and that sort of thing. And there you go, okay? The last thing you want to do is make sure that, turn the power off, okay? Grab a wire tool, okay? And you want to separate your clay from the bat, all right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, just like you're going to floss your teeth, put it on your thumbs, and I'm going to press it down onto the bat and then slide it underneath the clay just like that. What I've done now is I have separated the clay from the bat. So therefore, as this dries and it shrinks, what's going to happen is that if I don't do that, it will be stuck to the bat, and as it shrinks, it'll actually pull itself apart on the inside. By cutting under it, it allows the clay to slide a little bit, and it will actually shrink naturally and not mess itself up, all right? So then I'm gonna go ahead and write my name in the slurry there, and then I'm gonna remove my bat from the wheel, all right? I like using the rounded edge of my rib because it's nice and thick, and I slide it underneath. Don't know if you can see that, but I slide it underneath the bat between the top of the wheel head, and then it should just kind of pop off just like that. And there we go. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this, I'll put it over on a shelf somewhere. Make sure you come back the next day. I know you don't have class the next day, or if you do it on, a day when, you're not meeting, obviously we meet every other day because of the block scheduling. When we meet tomorrow, or when you get done with one project today, the next day, come in and cover this with a plastic bag. We want to make sure that the clay is leather hard when we go to trim the foot into the bottom of it. And that'll be shown in the next video, all right? But make sure we do that, all right? And here, you can see what I finally made in the final design, okay? So you can see that little squiggly design that I created with that serrated rib. All right, next video, I'll show you guys how to trim a foot into the bottom of it.